My sunny friend. How are you?
Hey, how are you, Rachel? So good to see you.
Good. We are getting some sunshine in the Mid-Atlantic today, so that's good. I feel like we've been a little cloudy lately, so glad to have you here.
Yes, but the sun will break through
Mhm.
and we'll be complaining about the heat soon. So,
That's true. Just very few days and a few days of contentment on the weather side because it changes so quickly.
exactly.
I'm excited that you're here. I know that we've talked about this topic so much, and that's why I feel like we always run out of time because I think that both of us could talk about financial wellness benefits in the workplace forever.
Absolutely.
But today is really just a focus on, I think that from the HR standpoint, the total rewards CFO, there's just a whole lot of noise about, okay, we need to do something on the financial wellness side. What are our options out there? What is the cost of doing nothing? And then how do we measure any solutions that we bring in as far as what does success look like? So those are the kind of things that I wanted to talk about today. I thought we'd start off with some really quick intros just for anybody who we might be new faces to, if you'd like to go first.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me today, Rachel. Well, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Amira Martin, and I am a financial consultant. Specifically, I specialize in the area of retirement plans. I am a fiduciary retirement consultant at Marsh McLennan, and I support plan sponsors, businesses who are offering these retirement plan programs. And I love the work that I've been doing. I actually started in financial services, just to give you a brief history. When I was in the United States Air Force, actually, I cross trained into financial management from air traffic control. So imagine that shift.
There's a shift.
I've been in this financial services, pretty much for my entire career, and love what I do here now, working with employers who sponsor retirement plans.
That's great. I always love to hear people's backgrounds and how they kind of came into employee benefits and whatever capacity they're in. A few of us are little girls in ringlets saying, "This is what I'm going to work in employee benefits. So I'm going to work in retirement when I grow up." So it's always nice to see the path that was laid out to lead people here because I feel like the work that we're doing is pretty impactful as well. And we love partnering with you guys on the retirement side. Again, I'm Rachel Fox. I'm VP of Sales and Partnerships at the Sunny Day Fund. We are an out of plan emergency savings account provider. So we really believe that retirement savings and emergency savings are two sides of the same coin. Both are accessed through the employer as an employee benefit. And in this time where I think there's been a great focus on financial wellness benefits, and that's been elevated into HR and total rewards and CFO conversations around benefit strategies for 2026. So our goal is to really break that down. As a company, Sunny Day Fund, again, emergency savings accounts out of plan. These are payroll deducted and employer incentivized liquid savings designed to be a first line of defense so that those retirement assets can grow undisturbed. If we see low participation in the retirement plan or we see high loans and withdrawal rates of those people who are participating, those are usually data points to indicate there's a greater need for liquidity in the benefit stack. And any financial planner will talk to you about what's your emergency savings account look like. So if we can just push the easy button and have that be an employee benefit where it's directed immediately through payroll before it even hits your checking account and those savings goals start on autopilot, all of a sudden people start accomplishing many more things than they've been able to historically on their own if they have their employer's help. So I
Rachel,
just wanted to, yeah, go ahead.
oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, but you
No,
just
you're good. I
reminded
was just going
me
to kick it
of
over to you.
something. You just reminded me of something
Yeah,
that I recall way back when I was learning about, 401ks, back when in
yeah.
my early 20s.
Mhm.
And I used to say things like, it's an automatic strategy. When you go down, you go and sign up for your retirement plan. At that point, you'd have to fill out a paper form, right? But
Nice.
I used to push this as an automatic strategy, sort of set it and forget it. Your employer is going to take care of it for you. That is what I used to push. And back then, it was always a part of the financial planning story to create, this emergency fund. But that conversation was very different back then. It was, this is very important to have. Make sure you're setting aside some money for a rainy day. I
Yeah,
remember
go do that on your
thinking
own.
this.
Go figure that out. Go do that.
So I'm so pleased to know that there are solutions that also now make that automated. So that makes for a lot more fun of a conversation when you're telling employees you can automate both if
That's right.
that's
That's
available
right.
to
It
you.
aligns with all the employer goals on helping to build a financially stable workforce. When we can automate those, people have greater success rates because, again, it really is making it mindless. It's making it really automatic and prioritizing the things that are most important to them and their families. If we have that employer incentive in there, just like we do on the retirement side, all of a sudden, if it's incentivizing new financial behaviors that people might not have been successful with on their own, and it's really tearing down financial barriers for employees who might not have access to these resources or not know how to start on their own. It turns out if you have poor credit or you've been justice involved or you only have $13 to your name, it's really difficult to just go get a high yield interest rate savings account and do a split direct deposit by taking all that to HR and setting that up. There's a lot of steps in there, and we're never gonna get mass adoption on that if we continue to put the onus on the employee to take the action step. So if we can do that for them, integrate it through payroll, we have a 19-second sign-up process, the employer kicks in some rewards to incentivize those savings. All of a sudden, we see that cushion start to build, and those loans and withdrawals against the retirement plan really start to decrease.
That's quite amazing. I mean, this is the a sign of the future. You know, we
That's right.
talk about, I know I'm really huge on this. A lot of people know that. I'm really forward thinking when it comes to what we're going to be doing with financial savings and financial wellness, in the future. We all, I think, need to
Mhm.
sort of take that forward thinking approach. You know, it's really good to wake up in the morning and say, okay, here's today, here's what I have. But the reality of it is, if you're in business, you really have to start thinking about what's my population going to look like tomorrow? What are they demanding and what are their needs? That's going to impact your bottom line ultimately. So, this is why I think it's important for us in financial services to begin having these conversations and
That's
and
right.
being there to support those businesses that have questions around, how do you go about doing this? How do I go about creating this type of opportunity for my people?
That's right. And so I have just a quick outline of all the things that are currently available for employers to offer as workplace financial wellness programs. And so, again, just really quickly setting the framework in what a lot of these conversations are looking like from an employer's standpoint. And so, if we have, can you see the screen that I'm sharing, Amira?
Perfect. Yeah.
You can, okay. So this is just, again, really broad outline. This does not cover every financial wellness program on the planet known to man. We're not going to cover that in 30 minutes. But this is just a rough outline of just kind of the framework around what some employers are thinking about. In workplace financial wellness solutions, we have employee paid options, which are becoming a bit ubiquitous because obviously they're free for employers to offer. If they're free for employers, somebody's got to be paying for it. And it turns out it was the people who didn't have the money to start with, the employees. So things like earned wage access is what's really where people can tap their paychecks early. There's payroll credit options. So lines of credit, payroll deducted loans that employees have, which obviously are much better than going to a payday loan facility, still reduces some of those 401k loans and withdrawal rates just to have some sort of first line of defense available. We've seen some employers try to self-solve for some of these issues. So we've seen internal personal loans from company to employee. That especially happens when we're in industries that don't offer a 401k or it's a participant that's a non-participant in the 401k, so they don't have that to lean on for a loan option, or the plan just doesn't allow loans. So we see that much more commonly, as well as emergency hardship relief funds. This is typically a fund that employers can put together that employees can access for specifically pre-approved qualifying circumstances, as well as Christmas clubs. I think that Christmas clubs of old, a lot of companies still have those. They've been growing through M&A, and they're like, a couple of our locations still have this Christmas club on the books. The employees really love it, but our legal counsel has said that we are not a bank, and there are wage garnishment laws in various states, and this might not be super compliant anymore. So we'd like to
That's
outsource
right.
this to a third party. And then we have employer sponsored programs, which is the world that you and I live in. So, retirement savings accounts, emergency savings accounts, financial coaching that comes in to provide one on one access to coaches and knowledge for employees, HSAs, HRAs, FSAs, and then educational assistance, things like student loans, tuitions, 529s fall into that category as well. So, again, just quickly to take 2 minutes to go over a lot of these because these might be some new terms for some people. These again are the options that we have to consider from the HR's point of view. This is the noise that's showing up in the inbox going, pick me for open enrollment. And how are we sifting through some of these? So I'll let you guide that conversation about how we should sift through. Right now, I'm just going to kind of go through some of these. Earned wage access,
And
people typically tell us they have much higher participation there than they ever thought that they were going to. Again, what does success look like here? Do we want to see a lot of people accessing their paychecks early because their next paycheck will be reduced? So we tend to help people just kind of spiral the drain a little bit quicker sometimes on this. And again, it just creates a dependency as opposed to creating financial stability. It's just getting to the next, instead of getting to the next Friday, it's getting to the next Wednesday even, right? It's creating that financial panic. It's just feeding that monster, I think. Those payroll deducted loans, again, on the credit side, available through payroll deduction that you can pay that back much better than a payday loan facility. And those are great options if people don't have other options. Like we don't want them to go to a payday loan. So this is certainly great. But this is all done in the lack of the absence of savings, right? If they don't have any savings, then we have to look at something else to put out the immediate fire. But my goal is what's to prevent the next fire happening 6 months down the road. These self-solve
I'd like
things.
to
Yes, go
take
ahead.
a pause right there just before you move on, because this really specifically, even with the previous slide where you put out all of these different solutions, and that is a
Yeah,
lot. That's a lot to weed through. And you
it
make an
is.
interesting point when you start to examine really what's this costing the employee or the employer for even, or exposure to even sustain or have any of these programs. And I think that that's really difficult to figure out what makes the most sense. But the biggest thing that I'm hearing from you is, and I like to use these analogies, but it's almost like
Mhm,
a dog chasing its own tail. And that's what we want to get away from. I think that's why we're having these conversations right now, just in listening, because on my end, as the advisor for
yep,
retirement plans, you don't necessarily see all of the noise that's heading, into the inboxes of your HR leadership and CFOs, or
mhm.
your business owners who have to make a decision on whether or not they're going to have these programs. All of it sounds good. It could be like a band-aid almost, but again, that is what we want to get away from, that dog chasing its own tail.
Yeah, and it's really touted as financial flexibility, right? So that we can have more flexibility in how people access the money that they've earned and what they can do with that money that they've earned. So, again, just make sure that we're diving down into what is the problem we're trying to solve? What is the cost of inaction? And how do we measure success? If we bring in options like this, what are the metrics that we're looking to gauge success? How can we tell if they're working or they're not working? A lot of times they're brought in without a tremendous amount of thought because there's not a cost for the employer to bring it in. So we might as well have something available, right? More is better than less. But sometimes these can do a little bit more damage. They were designed to be for a surprise, unexpected expense, and I can tap my paycheck early to handle that. But a lot of times we see, again, typical number of advances over the course of the year is 27. A lot of people get 26 paychecks in the year. So this is almost a per paycheck occurrence that many people are starting to use this on. It creates that dependency. The self-solve things, again, we see so many employers, especially in the smaller to mid market, that are still doing these internal personal loans from company to employee. The employee's fallen on hard times. They don't really have a lot of options. I just need $400 to get by. Just float me this and you can pay it back through payroll deduction. But that employee leaves, you're out that money. And it's creating this condition where we're telling employees, you don't actually have to build financial stability on your own. We'll swoop in and rescue you every time. So if we're always acting as the FEMA, they don't have a big incentive to build up the levees. So employers get really intrigued and sometimes frustrated that we have these users who are kind of repeatedly coming back for that request and telling more people about it. And then more people come and they're like, we're not a bank. We can't keep up with this. We can't approve all of these. We can't afford this. And then we have discrimination concerns if we're only approving some or and not others. The emergency hardship relief funds, again, is typically a pool of money that employers put in, available for employees if proof of this hardship. And the amount will be capped per incident, typically because there is a limited pool of money and it's for a specific pre-approved set of reasons. And I think that anytime we have employees do this, we're going to have a couple that will not raise their hand for this. They feel like they're worried about how this reflects on them. They don't always want to share this information with their employer. And so this isn't going to have mass appeal as well, but you will have some people that use it frequently. And then again, the Christmas clubs, that's more of a compliance issue than anything else. We've had several companies come to us who still had those on the books and are just looking for a compliant way to outsource that. So kind of wanted to get your thoughts on some of these solutions as we've seen employers try to solve for this themselves.
Yeah. Again, I don't want to put a stain on these solutions and these programs that are out there. They are
Yeah.
available, and some of these can
Yeah.
actually be available and coupled with other programs. And I think what we need to focus on is what is a more of a holistic, sound strategy that's going to spell success for my business and for my people. And I know ultimately you're thinking about your people because, all in all, you have your people, the business, they're happy, your business is happy. Business is
Right.
happy, people are happy. They go hand in hand. So, I don't want to, tear down these particular programs because there may be a good use for them, one or another. But again, I think the focus is really on creating, if you're going to do that internally. And again, I wanted to point this out really quickly, after doing a little bit of research on my own. And also knowing that coming off the heels of COVID, many more employers have actually taken on that feeling of improving financial well-being for their employees. And in fact, it was a Bank of America study done in 2020, a workplace benefits report, where they stated that 62% of the employers felt extremely responsible for their employees' financial wellness. And here's the big kicker. It is pretty staggering to note that in 2013, only 13% of those employers felt that way.
What a
So,
change.
with that being said, we have a significant amount of employers that are saying, you know what, I want to do something, right? So now, what is that something that I need to do? And I
That's
think
right.
this is where all that noise comes in and all of these different points that you're making here. And it really is pretty tough to gauge what the return on investment is for setting up these programs, because ultimately what it's showing is that, oh my gosh, my people are financially stressed and there's still something
Absolutely.
that needs to be done. We don't really necessarily need a band-aid for solving for that. We want the solution, and these solutions do come in certain forms, according to some of the research that I've done even on my own concerning
Mhm.
financial wellness. And even in creating a sound financial plan, I like to state that, we focus on paying down debt and creating a safety cushion for yourself, also known as an emergency fund. You can Google it and look it up, but this is the two, not the only areas, but some
Right.
of the two top areas that we target, specifically where you are, just even in your income status, you know what I mean? A low wage or mid, sort of middle wage earning individuals typically struggle if they don't know these kind of key points, So with that being said, if you know that you need some type of an emergency fund, and you got to say to yourself, well, why? Why do I need that, right? Before we get into talking about what that is, but it reduces stress, right?
Mhm.
And anxiety by having a financial cushion for unforeseen events. It's almost, it's not like putting the cart before the horse, I guess, if you will, but the idea is that no, I don't want an emergency to happen. Nobody thinks about these things, But honestly, just the idea, just even thinking about having, I'm just going to throw a number out there, $2,000 just saved in an emergency fund. I don't have an emergency going on right now. Just the feeling of peace that I have knowing that there's something there in case something happens. I think that's what we really need to understand is what we're doing when we're creating a sound financial plan. So with these particular, I guess earlier measures that maybe employers have adopted, to be supportive of their employees, I think what they're realizing is one, yes, no, I'm not a bank. And what I do want is to give my employees a sense of peace so that they show up happy at work, motivated, and that, obviously it's going to sell, it's going to reflect better on their productivity, for my organization.
Yeah, that's right. It gives people a little bit of breathing room and allows them to show up as their whole self to their job and focus on their job once they get there instead of being distracted with financial worries that many people feel like they're drowning in. It is a financial panic that many people are living under. So, this last thing, I just want to spotlight a couple of these employer sponsored solutions, and then I'll stop sharing and I'll let you share some great studies and data that I know that you have found as well. So, on the
Absolutely.
employer sponsored side, so a lot of companies, most companies are going to have retirement accounts in place. I think for too many, that is the sole financial well-being or financial wellness product that they have available. And so for certain industries, we could have really great participation there, especially if you're doing auto enrollment. There's some other industries where, again, retirement might not be the first step on the savings journey of every employee. So maybe we do need to start with, if we see that we have low participation in the retirement plan, we can try an emergency savings account, which we know will have really great participation. We typically see 40 to 60% voluntary participation, especially in people who are not participating in retirement savings, because it's a more approachable starting point. And then we see that stair stepping effort into better retirement participation, better retirement contribution. So there's no cannibalization concerns here. In fact, all the data shows the exact opposite, that ESAs are boosting all the retirement savings metrics that are most important for employers. Beyond that, we also have financial literacy and coaching services. So I'll let you talk about ProsperWise and the impact it makes there. Because again, a lot of times on the retirement side or on the emergency savings side, we're just trying to accumulate money. But without guidance on what you should do with that money, what should your next savings goal be? How much should you have? Where should you direct that? This becomes much more powerful when we can partner these two potential goals that we can help them accomplish on the saving side as well. The debt consolidation plans, budgeting apps, those sorts of things typically go hand in hand with some of these solutions. So again, I'll let you talk about that. And then at the last one, we often hear about this FSAs, health savings accounts, health retirement accounts. So the participation there can vary based on if there is an employer, the education piece, student loans, tuitions, 529s, that's become a much larger conversation of late because of legislative changes. And so those are other things to consider. All of these, again, are employer sponsored, employer paid solutions that we can use to uplift the needs of that very specific workforce. So I'll stop sharing now so that you can tell us a little bit more about your thoughts on some of these and some of the data points that you have found as well.
Right. I'll start with these particular, and what I appreciate is that you're showing, sort of the participation and how many of those employees actually participate in those programs. And I know those numbers look low, but they're actually fairly high given what we had before these programs were being implemented. Specifically, a lot of I would say plan sponsors and employees relied on maybe whatever platform their retirement program, was delivered on. They may have some sort of educational videos programs, but on your day to day, most people aren't sort of popping in to watch videos. It's almost
Right.
they're coming to work and they are encouraged to work, not watch retirement and financial education videos, right? So these are really more successful, and I believe this in my own opinion, when the employer is involved and engaged in creating a sound education program or strategy for their group. You know your employees well, right? As an
Right.
employer, only kind of who your people are, whether they're taking distributions, whether they're tapping into loans within their plans. And then, I believe that you should be working with your financial professional or consultant to find out, if you don't already have one in place, if this is something that they can support you with. And one of the things Rachel pointed out was that there are programs out there. And yes, at Marsh, we do have programs available, specifically one known as the ProsperWise, MMA ProsperWise, which is a financial literacy and also coaching platform that delivers education, on your time. You know what I mean? Like when you're ready, it's mobile friendly. Often a lot of larger organizations, 100 or more, even 500 plus, they have a
Mhm.
large population to service, you know what I mean? And by allowing or providing these programs to your very large population, you're sort of checking off a box, part of that. But the other part is how my employer helps constantly deliver and promote these programs that you've invested in for your people. So that's part of it. Um, Another thing that I wanted to make mention of is that with these tools in place, we are really providing them. And what I love about ProsperWise is that it does give you the tools to address some of the most pressing financial concerns. One being, and I've heard this the most, is credit card debt.
Yes.
So you're now empowering your employees with these tools available, and also with your help in sort of maybe demonstrating how these tools work and working with your strong consultant in delivering these programs. I mean, you really, really can come up with something that works. And I mean, I don't, like they say, Rome wasn't built in a day. Yes, Rachel, you'll hear me use these analogies often because it's true, right? So I don't expect that the financial wellness program that you're, analyzing or observing today is going to be developed overnight. I mean, it'd be great if it could, but I wouldn't. I would say there's a couple of different stages you should go through. When you're developing a sound, sort of plan for your people.
And it
And
changes over time, right? I
it
think the
does.
different generations have different generational needs. The newer, younger generation that's coming in is leaning a lot more on employers and asking for more things, which older generations would have never. It just wasn't expected that the employer would provide a lot of those services. They were expected just bootstrap it and figure it out. And the younger generation is not
Well, they're demanding
bashful about speaking
it.
up and saying, I need help on this. All my money comes from you. Can you help this just go farther? Can you do more with this? And so I kind of wanted to hope that you could talk about what employees are feeling. How do we see this manifesting? Like, this is
Yeah.
not an invisible problem. If you
Well,
have financial precarity in the workforce, what does this feel like for your employees? How is this manifesting on them? And how is this translating into business metrics that employers can really see the
yes.
cost of doing nothing or the cost of inaction?
Yes, I'll start with just my own experience
Yeah.
working with different employers. And what I have heard is they've been, some of the things, the challenges that they face is that they're experiencing high turnover with
Hmm.
their, sort of even C-suite individuals, or, and
Yeah.
as you go down there, some of their, rank and file employees are being offered certain benefits, from another employer that's looking a little bit more attractive. So I do know that employers are looking for ways to be more competitive where they can make their employees a little bit more sticky. Because one thing that Rachel spoke about was that, employees are bolder now. This is a new generation, and they are not afraid to ask for what it is that they want, depending on which generation you are. And I had the privilege of, and in collaboration with Rachel as well,
Mhm.
of doing a panel on Gen Z specifically. And that is exactly what I heard. And let me tell you, they are not shy, and they will tell you how they feel. So that's one. It's, how do we work with this new generation, And there are ways, there are ways. And what I'm happy about is it's while we know that having these what I say tools, or even these types of benefits within your organization, such as one, your retirement plan. That's
Yep.
one. Okay. That's one tranche. And having an emergency savings sort of feature, taking that on as an employer and figuring out a way to incentivize this. While this all sounds good for you as the employer, it actually may not really make sense because you don't know what that means to you. You know that you're going to have to spend for setting up certain programs, right? This is the first thing that you're thinking about. And you're wanting to, I know, given the climate that we're in, some companies are sort of pulling back and looking for ways to save. But I think it's important for us to really understand what that return on investment looks like. And I'm happy to state that I did find some And I'm very, very happy to state that there have been some recent studies done that we actually have some, meaningful things to report on that. One being a study done by Dr. Carrie Leanna, or Lena, I think it's Lena, right?
Leanna,
Leanna.
Carrie Leanna at the University of Pittsburgh.
Right, at
Mhm.
the University of Pittsburgh, and they said the effects of an emergency savings program. They were showing how it impacts employees' work performance. And they did a 2-year field intervention, which I thought was pretty cool. Thank you guys for doing this, because what their findings reflected. Was that the employers who implement the emergency savings program, in this case, it was a transportation company
Right.
that they were reviewing, employees who had an average household income of about $65,000, there was an 80% decrease, roughly around 80% decrease in traffic
87% decrease
citations.
in traffic citations of those who
Traffic
were participating
citation.
in emergency savings versus their peers at the same company who were not participating.
And that's amazing because, I mean, a traffic citation, I know that, these are tickets that you're paying, right? That's a cost, one. But also, when you hear that someone is having a traffic citation, that means that, okay, an accident could be looming. And an accident, according to that report, could range anywhere from 100 some odd thousand plus dollars all the way up to several $1 million,
That's right.
right? And then establishing having that this particular transportation company establish this program, being this emergency savings program, and they were able to show how much of a difference it made. I mean, those numbers really spoke something to me. It was huge. The fact that they invested in the program, the fact that this university was able to do the study on it, to actually reflect and show that, wait a minute, we changed the way we designed or developed our financial wellness program. We incentivized our workers, and these are, not the highest wage earners, but this is a real world. These are real employees, and this is a really good slice of a population.
Yeah, solidly middle class America. Yeah, completely
Absolutely.
trying to do the
And,
right thing.
and financial stress is something that then translate to mental health stress. Okay. These are all the things that they're dealing with, which are causing them to not show up and be their most productive selves. So I think when you're looking at your population, thank you. I would say, thank you to the Dr. Leanna, for that study.
And her work continues, her work
It
continues.
does.
She's
And
finding
there
more companies to do these same studies with and different industries to show productivity, as how financial precarity is impacting the productivity of the workforce. And just looking at time, I just want to make sure that you're
Yes.
able to share from an employee's standpoint what needs to be the priorities in whatever we're bringing in to have the employers, making this decision to bring this in for the employees. What is the from the employee's mindset going to make most of a difference in improving financial outcomes for them and helping to empower them mentally to be able to kind of create new futures for themselves?
I love that that we're sort of closing with this, because in financial services and even in financial planning, our fellow CFPers out there and other licensed credentialed financial experts would state, and I've read enough of those those articles for those who are doing this, working with individuals alone
Yeah.
in creating a financial plan. One of the two areas that are, critical when you're creating one is, one, if you don't have debt, you want that cushion,
Mhm.
So we're looking at, try to balance that debt, pay that debt down, but at the same time, to get started, begin the process of saving for a rainy day or creating an emergency fund, whether you're doing it on your own. And I tell you what, it sure is nice to know that an employer could actually offer something like this for me.
Yeah.
But there are more, like you said, there are programs out there that help get this started. Either you're doing it on your own as the person, but again, inertia seems to be a thing
It
for
is.
for
It
us
is.
folks. It's not something, and sometimes, like starting there, I think is going to really, and when I teach, creating a sound financial plan, I start with, get yourself an emergency savings fund. I typically
Mhm.
say between 3 to 6 months is when we're teaching budgeting and proper ways to manage your finances. We also often state, try and get that debt paid down, starting with those high interest, interest credit card
That's
debt
right.
that you might be having. So you can't have one without the other, honestly. I think that if you can have that established and then specifically, the younger you are, it's even more impactful. Friends of mine that do have emergency savings accounts, that sort of understand that they do typically have less stress around those emergencies
Yeah,
when they do happen.
of
I mean,
course,
that's
of course.
obvious,
Yeah.
and
And I know that you're an Ayn Rand fan, and I love how you kind of bring
yes,
this all together to wrap us up on that
I
kind of
do.
concept and
Yeah.
using that as our North Star in the decision-making process.
It's so hilarious because I began reading Ayn Rand when I was a kid, and it really I know I was really young reading her books. Atlas Shrugged did it for
Yeah,
me, and
it's
it
like that
really
big.
is right. But it speaks volumes
It does.
to things that we're experiencing today around
Yep,
all different
100%.
aspects of life, savings, finances, whatever. But one of the things, and I'm not surprised that she made this quote that she said, where I think it's really timely. She said, "Money is a tool, right? And it'll take you wherever you want, wherever you wish. Be it somewhere terrible, I know I said you could be on a box in the street
Take you
somewhere.
on the highs and
Money can
lows.
take you there if you're not doing it right, or it could take you to a place where ultimately we know we're going to get older. We want to have, like we dream of what that retirement looks like, and because we're living longer and longer, statistics
Yep,
show
yep.
that when you retire, your life does not just stop. You know what I mean?
Right.
So we really want people to really use these tools that their employer provides for them. Being rather it being a retirement plan, we don't want to see people drawing down from that. We want that to be established for their future. But again, just to end the quote, I know, sorry, Ayn Rand, I didn't mean to chop that up, but what she did, she ended it by saying, but it will not replace you. Money, although it's a tool, it will not replace you as the driver. Okay. And so what that means is that if we could take, I guess I'd say this, take the bull by the horns. I know it's the last one, I swear it.
I'm gonna start a tally.
Yeah. But if we can and understand how to do it correctly,
Mhm,
holistically. You know
mhm,
what I mean? This would spell, I think, more happier people in the future. And I think it's our responsibility as financial experts or professionals, however
mhm.
you wish to call yourself, to really start having these conversations, and motivate your clients, whether you're working with an individual or a business, about what their educational strategy looks like. And maybe then, and in this order, and I know I don't want to, I know in the best interest of time, some of the things that I say is: one, analyze the current programs that you have in
Mm,
place now. What do you have in place now? Because I don't want you thinking, oh gosh, here they're talking to me about yet another program to add and something else to manage. How much stress is that's all you're thinking. Don't start there. Take steps, baby
yeah, there's
steps,
money in the waste. Find out
right?
what's not being impactful, repurpose those
Right.
dollars into something that will be meaningful. Yeah,
Absolutely. And then, have a conversation with your financial consultant, because if there's something
that's right.
that might be missing, maybe they can help guide you into a better program that works for you. You're a
Mhm.
unique organization, you're a unique person. So definitely have that conversation with that financial professional. And then finally, once you have that conversation, you can start filling in the blanks. Now you're creating a holistic program. That's what I want you to think about, because creating a holistic program is about filling in the blanks and really looking at your people, just looking at your people, not what another company down the block is doing.
Right,
That's not
understanding
who
what
you are.
specific problems you're trying to solve within your own workforce, what the
That's
data
right.
is reflecting in your workforce,
Mhm.
again, what the cost of inaction is, and how are we going to measure success of any programs that we bring in. I feel like those are the three crucial questions
Absolutely.
that we always need to kind of use as our compass, as our North Star in the decision-making process. What are we trying to solve for? What's it costing us to do nothing? And how do we measure if what we did is working or not so that we have a way to kind of gauge
Absolutely.
that and reassess.
I
So
couldn't add anything else to that. And the only other thing is to add that at Marsh McLennan Agency, that we
mhm.
are local specialists who cover employee benefits, retirement. We work with individuals and also businesses with to support risk management. And to name a few, those are the few areas of expertise that we cover. And what I like to say is, and what we know ourselves to be, and what we're known for, is that we have access to global resources with limitless possibilities for what we can do for our clients. And if you're not working with a consultant today, or you want to have more conversation around some of these programs that we're talking about, or
Right.
developing financial plan, just starts with a conversation. That's a pretty easy thing to have, and I'm going to continue to be out there promoting and providing education to business owners who are looking to enhance their programs. I'll continue to do that.
Yeah, and I think with every new year that goes by, there's always going to be new tools and new solutions and resources out there. So don't just automatically have everything on default from whatever you did last year. I feel like every year needs a fresh look. Again, some of those data points within your workforce might have changed. And a lot of employers don't know that things like emergency savings accounts are a benefit. So lean on your consultant to introduce some of these new ideas to you, but always have those questions as our North Star that this is what we're trying to get accomplished, and together I'm sure you guys will figure it out and bring in the solutions that you need to that's going to be most impactful for your workforce.
I
Thank you
do
so
have
much. Go ahead.
wait, one more thing, one
Yeah,
more
go
thing.
ahead. No,
I was like, before we go, because
fine.
I know I said to you, I said, Rachel, we might have to come back and do this all over. I'll do another one, a follow up to this one. But there was
You said
one.
you were going to aim for 30 minutes and it's going to be 45.
I know it, I know it, I know it. But I looked at it, that a couple of things when you're thinking about financial wellness, I want you to think
Yes.
about it as a three-pronged approach, right?
Hmm.
To effectively address it, I believe the conversation should start with how one effectively manages their expenses,
Hmm.
how they're saving for their future, and how they prepare for unexpected financial challenges. So if you could think about those three things, start there. Now you're looking at the programs that you currently have in place. Are they addressing those things? And then if they're not, have that conversation. So I wanted to leave them with that as well when they're thinking about creating their financial wellness strategy.
Yeah, these are all questions to talk with your consultant and your advisor about so that you guys can formulate a personalized, customized strategy for your workforce and follow the data. There is no shortage of data between the Form 5500 on your 401k, employee engagement surveys. There's all kinds of ways that we can help you gauge what the data and what the stories from the workforce is telling you. I'm a firm believer that there's a story behind every data point, and understanding the decision making that goes into the stories that feed into those data points will allow us to create the path that's going to make most of an impact for the majority of our workforce, not a narrow sliver of our workforce, but a really cast a wide net for the financial precarity that exists out there.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Thank
Thank
you.
you for your time. It was so good to see you. I wish you a very sunny day. Thank you for having me.
Always. Thank you so much. Have